Chapter Art. On the extinction of the family of Yadu and the anecdote of Parikshit. Suta said, on the third day after the Pandavas returned to Hastinapura, King Dhritarashtra, along with Gandhari and Kunti, perished in a forest fire. At that time, Sanjay had left Dhritarashtra in the forest and had set out on a pilgrimage. King Yudhishthira heard of this from Narada and was deeply grieved. 36 years after the destruction of the Kuru family, the descendants of Yadu at Prabhasa Tirtha were also annihilated by the curse of a Brahman. The mighty Yadvas, intoxicated by wine, began fighting among themselves and wiped each other out, even in the presence of Krishna and Balram. Following this, Balram renounced his mortal body. Then, the lotus-eyed Bhagavan Krishna, struck by an arrow from a hunter, gave up his life, in accordance with the curse of a Brahman. When Vasudeva heard of Krishna's passing, he meditated on the goddess of the universe within his heart and peacefully left his mortal body. Hearing this news, Arjuna was overwhelmed with sorrow. He went to Prabhasa and performed the funeral rites for all the deceased. Upon seeing Hari's lifeless body, Arjuna gathered wood and set fire to it, cremating Krishna along with his 8 principal wives. He also cremated Balram's body along with his wife, Revati. Arjuna then travelled to Dwarka and evacuated all its inhabitants. As soon as they left, the entire city of Dwarka, the great kingdom of Vasudeva, was submerged by the ocean. As Arjuna was leading the people away from Dwarka, he suddenly felt weak and powerless. A band of robbers, known as the Abhiras, attacked and plundered all the wealth and abducted Krishna's widowed wives. Despite his indomitable valor, Arjuna could not protect them. Upon arriving at Indraprasth, Arjuna installed Vajra, the son of Anirudh, as the ruler. Feeling disheartened by his own weakness, Arjuna went to Vyasa and confided in him. Vyasa then said, O highly intelligent one, when Hari and you reincarnate in another yuga, your heroic strength will once again manifest. Pritha's son, Arjuna, returned to Hastinapura with a sorrowful heart and informed everything to Yudhishthira, the Dharmaraja. Upon hearing about the extinction of the Yadvas and Hari's departure from his mortal body, Yudhishthira decided to renounce the world and journey to the Himalayas. Before leaving, he installed Parikshit, the son of Uttara, who was then 36 years old, on the throne of Hastinapura. He then left his palace, accompanied by his brothers and Draupadi, to wander into the forests of the Himalayas. Thus, the Pandavas, the sons of Pritha, ruled Hastinapura for 36 years before renouncing their mortal bodies in the Himalayas. After the departure of the Pandavas, the greatly religious sage King Parikshit ruled his kingdom with great vigilance for 60 years. One day, Parikshit went on a hunting expedition into a dense forest. While hunting, he shot a deer and pursued it. As noon approached, he became thirsty, hungry, and exhausted, his body covered in perspiration. At that moment, he came across a Muni, sage, who was deeply immersed in meditation. The king asked the Muni, "Where can I find water?" However, the Muni was observing a vow of silence and did not respond. Seeing this, the thirsty king, influenced by Kali, became angry. In his frustration, he picked up a dead serpent with the tip of his bow and placed it around the Muni's neck. Despite this disrespect, the Muni remained unmoved, motionless in his state of enlightenment, and did not utter a single word. The king then returned home. Then, the Muni's son, born from the cow's womb, Shringi, a great ascetic and servant devotee of Mahashakti, heard of the incident while playing in the forest. His friends approached him and said, "O Muni, someone has placed a dead serpent around your father's neck." Hearing these words, Shringi became furious. Taking water in his hands, he uttered a curse. "He who has today placed a dead serpent around my father's neck, let that villain be bitten by the serpent Takshaka within 1 week from this day." One of the Muni's disciples immediately went to the palace and informed King Parikshit of the Brahman's curse. When Parikshit, the son of Abhimanyu, heard of the curse, he accepted its certainty, knowing that a Brahman's words are infallible. He then addressed his aged ministers. "O ministers, this curse has come upon me due to my own fault. Now, consider carefully and decide what must be done. The scriptures teach that death is inevitable, yet wise men always seek remedies according to the Shastras. Many sages advocate taking appropriate steps to counter any misfortune. It is said that all actions, when approached with wisdom and proper means, can be overcome, no problem remains unsolved. Parikshit continued. Therefore, I say this, there is great power in ascetics, sacred chants, mantras, and medicinal herbs, or shadis. If used correctly, can they not yield results in this situation? I have heard of a case where Muni's wife died from a snake bite, yet her husband gave half of his own life to her and revived her. So, why should I passively accept fate without resistance? Parikshit then addressed his ministers with a firm resolution. It is not the way of the learned to surrender to fate without action. One must always strive to shape the present. Tell me, have you ever seen anyone, whether in the heavens or in this world, who simply sits idle, depending entirely on fate? Even renunciates, sannyasins, who have forsaken the world, still go to the homes of householders for alms, whether invited or not. Furthermore, even if food is brought before a person and placed in his mouth, can it reach the stomach without effort? Effort is necessary in every action. So, let us now determine the best course of action against this impending doom. Parikshit continued. Therefore, one should exert one's own prowess from the very outset. The intelligent may accept fate with the thought, what can be done? It is not ordained for me. Yet, it is wise to act rather than resign to fate alone. When Parikshit spoke thus, the ministers inquired, which Muni brought his dead wife back to life by giving her half of his own lifespan? And how did his wife die? Kindly describe all these details to us. Parikshit replied, Bhrigu Muni had a very beautiful wife named Puloma. From her womb was born the world-renowned Chavana Muni. Sukanya, the daughter of King Saryati, became the wife of Chavana. From her womb was born a beautiful son named Pramti, who became famous in the world. Pramti had a renowned and beautiful wife named Pratapi. From their union, a great ascetic son named Ruru was born. At this time, a man named Sthulkesha, a religious and truthful ascetic, was engaged in severe penance, tapasya. Meanwhile, the chief Apsara, Menka, engaged in a union with Vishwavasu, the Gandharv, on the banks of a river, and conceived a child. She then left that place and arrived at the hermitage of Sthulkesha, where she gave birth to a very beautiful daughter. Seeing the newborn girl alone and orphaned, Muni Sthulkesha took her in, nurtured her, and named her Pramadwara. Over time, Pramadwara grew into a charming young woman, blessed with beauty and auspiciousness. One day, Muni Ruru saw her and became smitten with love for her. Thus ends the 8th chapter of the 2nd book on the extinction of the Yadu dynasty and the anecdote of Parikshit in the Mahapurana Srimad Devi Bhagavatam of 18,000 verses.